Have you ever been scrolling through your phone and suddenly stop, not because you meant to, but because something on screen just froze you? That's exactly what happened when Hailey Bieber hit go live on Instagram and did something no one saw coming. No filters, no glam, no polished PR statement. Just Hailey, raw and unedited, apologizing not vaguely, not indirectly, but directly to Selena Gomez. And in that moment, the internet didn't just react. It held its breath. For years, this wasn't just a celebrity feud. It was a cultural war zone disguised as a timeline. Selena versus Hailey. Compassion versus suspicion. Public heartbreaks, private shade, coded captions, and fan-fueled chaos. Entire corners of TikTok became decoding centers. Twitter transformed into a virtual courtroom. Instagram? A battle map. And in all that noise, one thing remained constant. Silence. The kind that speaks volumes. But on that day, the silence cracked. Hailey didn't drop a quote or hide behind the safe language of misunderstandings. She said the name. She said sorry. And she said it while the world was watching. Not from a press conference, but from the vulnerable glow of her phone screen. So why now? What pushed her to break character and finally address the elephant the internet had been feeding for years? And more importantly, was it sincere? Or just a calculated move to clean up a crumbling image? And what about Selena? How did she respond to a moment that for some felt like long overdue accountability, and for others, suspiciously convenient timing? This isn't just about drama anymore. This is about what happens when silence isn't safe anymore. And the truth can't hide behind a filter. Let's dive in. To understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to go back, way back, to where it all began. Because this wasn't just a sudden outburst or a random drama drop. This was the climax of a story that's been silently building in comment sections, red carpets, and Instagram captions for over half a decade. Selena Gomez and Justin Bieber had a love story that felt like a roller coaster the world never wanted to get off of. Every post, every paparazzi shot, every lyric, it all became part of a living archive fans studied like sacred text. Then came Hailey, first in the background, then center stage. And just like that, the fandom divided. It wasn't just love triangles. It was decoding TikToks like CIA agents. It was analyzing nail polish choices like they were press statements. Smirk in a photo? Shade. A caption with a period? War. And while all three stars, Selena, Hailey, and Justin, kept it mostly cryptic, the internet filled in the blanks with loud certainty. Even the most casual observer could feel the weight. This wasn't just a celebrity feud. It became the blueprint for how digital age conflict plays out when love, loyalty, and millions of followers collide. What made it worse? The silence. The almost clinical way no one ever really addressed it head-on. No tweets calling each other out, no interviews with dramatic revelations, just subtle digs, suspicious timing, and Instagram stories so layered you'd think they were written by Dan Brown. Over time, it became exhausting. For the fans, for the media, and maybe, just maybe, for the women involved too. But when Hailey finally spoke, it wasn't just an answer to years of speculation. It was a release valve on a pressure cooker the internet had been heating. For far too long. To understand why Hailey's apology shook the internet, you have to rewind the clock. This wasn't a random outburst or an isolated incident. It was the climax of a story that's been simmering for years. Anyone who's been online in the last half-decade has felt it, even if they never wanted to pick a side. The tension between Hailey Bieber and Selena Gomez wasn't just tabloid gossip. It became a digital battleground that stretched across Instagram, TikTok, red carpets, and interviews. The shade wasn't always obvious. Sometimes it was buried in a caption. Other times, it was a side glance at an awards show or a cryptic Instagram story posted 5 minutes after the other girls went viral. Fans weren't just watching. They were decoding, dissecting, and assigning meaning to every emoji and outfit. And in the center of it all stood Justin Bieber, the man whose past and present relationships had unknowingly birthed an emotional internet war. The fandoms on both sides didn't just observe, they participated. They turned comment sections into echo chambers, launched TikTok investigations, and spun up entire timelines mapping out every coincidence. From Selena's heartbreaking ballads to Hailey's carefully curated silence, every move was interpreted as a message. And Slowly, what could have been dismissed as fan overreach started to feel real, because then came the interviews. The live streams. The tweets and statements that were just vague enough to stoke the fire but pointed enough to feel personal. It wasn't just fan theory anymore, the tension was undeniable. And for two women who had never fully said each other's names in public, the energy between them spoke volumes. The question wasn't if something was going on. It was how bad it had gotten behind the scenes. And then everything cracked. It happened in early June in the most modern way possible, not through a press conference or a headline, but through a series of Instagram stories that detonated the internet. Hailey posted a cryptic quote about protecting your light and not letting others dim your spirit. On its own, it was vague, generic, even. But context is everything, and the timing couldn't have been more explosive. Just hours earlier, Selena had shared an emotional post about body image and self-acceptance. The overlap was too specific, too emotionally charged, and too familiar for fans to ignore. Within minutes, the digital court of public opinion erupted. TikTokers began dissecting every frame. Comment sections exploded. Influencers picked sides. And for the first time, even verified celebrities, the ones who usually stay neutral, started chiming in. This wasn't just fan speculation anymore. The tension had become mainstream, and Hailey was right in the center of it. For years, silence had been her defense, the elegant, controlled non-response. But now that silence had turned against her. Because when millions are watching, waiting, and refreshing your profile, not saying anything feels louder than screaming. The backlash wasn't just brewing, it was boiling over. Hailey could feel it, her team could feel it. And maybe most importantly, she herself could no longer ignore it. That's when she did something no one expected. She went live, no warning, no teaser. Just her, a front-facing camera, and the weight of 5 years of unresolved drama hanging in the air. What she said next would either shift the narrative or seal it. And the world was ready to judge every word. She looked straight into the camera, no ring light, no makeup team, no perfectly polished background. Just Hailey Bieber holding her phone like a shield and simultaneously a confession booth. What she said wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't packaged. It wasn't even safe. It was messy, human, and for once completely unfiltered. I just want to say I'm sorry, she began. Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. If anything I've ever said or done came off as disrespectful or hurtful, especially to Selena, that was never my intention. There it was, the name, no coyness, no certain someone. She said Selena, and she said it with something that sounded a lot like humility. Maybe even remorse. She paused, and you could feel the silence through the screen. Millions of people were watching not just for drama, but for resolution. Her voice cracked slightly as she continued. I've made mistakes. I've let other people's opinions get in my head. I've been defensive. And that's not who I want to be anymore. Especially not as a woman supporting other women. No spin. No blame shifting. No victim narrative. Just accountability, and in a culture where apologies are usually or usually faux. Just strategic PR stunts dressed up in vague language, this one cut deeper. Not because it was perfect, because it wasn't, but because it was personal. For the first time, Hailey wasn't speaking through an interview or around a scandal, she was speaking into it. Owning it, feeling it, some fans were moved. Others stayed skeptical, but almost everyone agreed. This was different. Because this wasn't just about two women in a long-brewing social media feud. This was a moment that touched something deeper. A rare admission of emotional fallout in a world obsessed with polished images and silent wars. And just when it felt like the internet couldn't handle any more surprises, Selena responded. There she was, no designer lighting, no stylist in sight, no flashy graphics or carefully planned PR filter. Just Hailey Bieber, her phone, and the weight of the internet pressing down on her. In a world where silence is often weaponized and apologies are filtered through teams of lawyers, this moment felt jarringly human. Her voice trembled as she spoke, eyes flickering with something that looked like fear or maybe just truth. I just want to say I'm sorry, she began, not dodging, not deflecting, not hiding behind vague phrases like a certain someone. She said the name out loud, Selena. And not with bitterness, not with defiance. With something that almost sounded like remorse. She admitted to her mistakes. to letting others' opinions shape her actions, to being defensive, guarded, and at times less than kind. There was no counterattack, no passive-aggressive jabs, just accountability. And that silence between her sentences, it wasn't dead air. It was years of digital noise finally settling. Hailey, for perhaps the first time, wasn't speaking at the internet. She was speaking into it. And millions were listening, but as always, the internet split in two. Some praised her bravery, called it growth. Others weren't buying it. Was it a calculated move to protect her brand? A performance disguised as repentance? The speculation came just as fast as the praise. But before anyone could fully digest the shock of Hailey's words, another message appeared, this time from the other side of the silence. Selena Gomez, known for her grace, her restraint, and her perfectly timed subtweets, posted a quiet but piercing message to her Instagram story just 24 hours later. Words matter. Kindness matters. Healing takes time. Love you all. No direct mention. No tags, but everyone who had been following this saga knew exactly who it was for. And in that moment, Selena didn't clap back, she disarmed. It wasn't a public brawl. It was a soft, deliberate shift. A message that said, I heard you. And I choose peace. After Hailey's unexpected apology, the internet split right down the middle. Some called it brave, others calculated. The timing. Raised eyebrows. Just days before, backlash had reached a boiling point. Influencers, media outlets, and even neutral observers had begun calling her out by name. For many, the apology felt less like a spontaneous moment of growth and more like a strategic play, a way to save face in a narrative that had clearly turned against her. But here's the thing, even if it was PR, it still hit different. Because it wasn't just an email blast or a carefully manicured statement buried in a caption. It was Hailey's face, her voice, her breath catching mid-sentence, her hands visibly trembling. That kind of vulnerability, whether staged or sincere, is hard to fake. Still, the internet isn't known for giving the benefit of the doubt. Some viewers immediately pulled up receipts, old clips, past posts, shaded comments from months ago. She's only sorry because it finally affected her image, one tweet read. Others weren't so quick to dismiss it. Growth looks like this, someone replied, awkward, messy, public, but honest. And that's the real tension, isn't it? When public figures apologize, we expect perfection, the perfect words, the perfect tone, the perfect motives. But what if growth doesn't look like that? What if real remorse is clumsy and uncomfortable and arrives later than we'd like? So, was it real or was it PR? The truth might live somewhere in between. Maybe she apologized because she felt it in her bones. Or maybe she did it because her brand was bleeding and someone in a meeting finally said, it's time. Either way, the internet felt it. And so did Selena. While the internet was still recovering from Hailey's unexpected live stream, all eyes turned to Selena. For someone who had spent years navigating the spotlight with measured grace and selective silence, the question wasn't if she would respond, it was how. And then, without warning, she did. Not with a dramatic video, not with a fiery caption, but with a simple Instagram story. A soft, white background with 6 quiet words. Words matter. Kindness matters. Healing takes time. No tags, no names. No drama, just intention. But make no mistake, the message hit hard. To the millions. Watching this saga unfold, it was clear Selena had heard Hailey. And she wasn't retaliating. She was redirecting. Her response wasn't a clapback. It was a reset. It wasn't about reclaiming power. It was about restoring peace. And in that restraint, in that refusal to be baited by chaos, Selena delivered. Something more powerful than any tweet could ever hold. Clarity. That moment revealed everything about who she's chosen to be. Not a participant in the noise, but a reminder of what grace looks like when no one's expecting it. It was the kind of response that doesn't just move past the drama, it transforms it. Because sometimes the loudest message comes not from what you say, but from what you choose not to. On the surface, it looked like closure. Hailey spoke her truth. Selena responded with grace. Fans finally exhaled after years of silent wars and whispered jabs. But anyone who's been online long enough knows peace in celebrity culture rarely lasts. Beneath the calm statements and polite Instagram stories, something lingers. Not bitterness, necessarily, not even tension. But unfinished emotion, the kind that doesn't always resolve with one apology and a well-worded response. The internet, after all, thrives on narrative. Loops. Even when a story seems done, it finds ways to reopen itself. Through old clips, resurfaced tweets, or a fan theory that suddenly makes sense. And with Selena and Hailey, this isn't just any feud. It's a saga built on years of speculation, subtlety, and unspoken pain. So the question isn't just, is it over? It's, will we let it be over? Because sometimes it's not the celebrities who keep a feud alive, it's us, the fans. The media, the algorithm. We screenshot. We analyze. We add captions to expressions and context to silence. And in doing so, we breathe new life into conflicts that might otherwise fade. But maybe this time, something did shift. Maybe not dramatically, maybe not permanently, but meaningfully, because in a world obsessed with clapbacks and cancellations, this was different. This was two women constantly compared, constantly picked apart, choosing reflection over reaction. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't performative. It was human. And if that humanness can survive the noise, maybe we're one step closer to rewriting the script, not just for them, but for how we view all public paying dots. So now, we can't say for sure if this is the final chapter. But for now, it's a pause. A breath, a moment of mutual recognition that for once, didn't end in fire. And maybe that's enough to start something new. The internet didn't just react, it erupted. But this time, the explosion felt different. Instead of the usual firestorm of hate and division, the comment sections were reflective. There was tension, sure, but also grace. Team Selena stood tall, praising her for the quiet strength she's always carried. Team Hailey, meanwhile, applauded the courage it takes to say, I was wrong, with millions watching. And then there were the neutrals, the ones exhausted by the drama, simply grateful to see two women taking a breath instead of throwing another punch. But beneath the praise and skepticism, something more revealing surfaced. The comments weren't just about Hailey or Selena anymore. They were about a stop, because in every I respect her for that, and every I've been there too, the public unknowingly peeled back a mirror. People weren't just dissecting a celebrity feud. They were confronting their own silent rivalries, their own grudges, their own moments of pride that got in the way of peace. Social media, usually a space for judgment, became, at least for a moment, a place for shared humanity. Even the hot takes had a softness to them. I still don't fully trust her, but I respect the apology. Maybe it was strategic, but it still mattered. These weren't just reactions. They were recognitions, maybe of past mistakes. Maybe of the times we wish someone had apologized to us. Or maybe the times we should have done it first. Of course, not everyone was ready to buy in. Some said it was brand damage control. Others rolled their eyes, calling it too little, too late. And yet, even those comments didn't land with the usual venom. Because at its core, this wasn't about cancel culture. It was about closure. It was about watching two public figures constantly compared, picked apart, and weaponized against each other finally acknowledge that the internet might have written the headlines, but they were the ones living the story. This moment didn't just shake up the narrative, it reshaped the lens through which we view it. And maybe, just maybe, it reminded us that behind every feud, behind every curated photo, and every viral quote, there are just people. People learning, stumbling, and sometimes finally choosing to grow. Forget the fame for a second. Forget the designer gowns, the Met Gala photos, the perfectly curated Instagram grids. Strip all of that away, and what we were left with in this moment was something undeniably human. Two women shaped by the weight of millions of eyes, finally breaking the cycle of silence, comparison, and quiet resentment, one by choosing vulnerability, the other by choosing grace. And somewhere in between their stories and their screens, something shifted. Not everything, not forever, but enough. Enough to remind us that behind the headlines and hashtags are people just trying to find their way through judgment, pressure, and pain. Hailey didn't just apologize to Selena. She apologized to every person who has ever felt the sting of public perception, to every woman who's been silently pitted against another, to anyone who's stayed quiet out of fear or let bitterness live where truth should have been spoken. Her voice cracked because the moment was real. Selena didn't respond with applause or fire. She responded with a whisper of peace, and in that whisper, there was power. She chose healing, and in doing so, reminded us that sometimes silence can be louder than any comeback. This wasn't just a viral moment, it was a mirror. A chance to ask ourselves, how do we respond when we're misunderstood? When we're wrong? When we're asked to grow? Do we lash out, deflect, double down, or do we pause, breathe, and try to be better? Because we've all had a Hailey moment. We've all been Selena too. And maybe the question isn't whose. Right, but who's ready to rise dots, so now it's your turn. Have you ever had to apologize when it hurt your pride? Have you forgiven someone who never even said, "I'm sorry"? Drop your thoughts below. Be honest. Be kind. Be real, because this wasn't just about two women and one IG live. It was about all of us.